Welcome to the Future of Structures podcast, where we talk to the experts who are evolving our buildings for tomorrow. And here is your host, Adam Jones.
Today we are speaking with Stephen Turner. So he is an architect with over 20 years experience and is a partner at Gray Puksand. So Stephen has a lot of experience in the education space. So today we are going to talk about vertical schools. So as our cities evolve and become increasingly dense, we need new solutions for education in our buildings. In the show, we're going to discuss the new paradigm of designing for education, using design pedagogy, the important aspects of designing vertical schools. It was great speaking with Stephen. I did the interview at his offices and they definitely walk the talk. So especially that design pedagogy, they have a really innovative kind of feel in the office. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show as much as I did. Without any further ado, here is Stephen Turner.
I've been practicing as an architect for about 25, 30 years. My early years after graduation, I actually worked in Vienna, in Austria, for a number of years as a design architect and working across, great opportunity for a young recent graduate actually to work in a different culture and a different language for a while. Coming back to Australia, I guess been with my company now for 25 years and over the last 15 to 20 years specialising in education design.
Yep.
And particularly interested in the way that modern teaching practices, we often use the term pedagogy, is driving design. So that's been a real focus for us, yeah.
Awesome. So the pedagogy, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah. So can you just elaborate a little bit on what this philosophy really is?
Yeah, look, this is one of these words that get bandied around and it often scares people, but the way I always like to see it is pedagogy is just the art of teaching and learning. So really, in a nutshell, what pedagogy has been, or this art of teaching and learning in the past, was driven out of the industrial age. A one-size-fits-all sort of model.
Yep.
And I think, most people recognise the classroom as predominantly the majority of the spaces in schools where the learning happens. But actually now it's not impossible to have a classroom. A classroom can still be a good space for learning, but it's not the only place. And pedagogy, the new pedagogies are actually driven by many factors. But one of the things that's really affected the change is technology.
Yeah, okay.
So all of our mobile devices, the ability to be able to communicate with one another remotely and also to be able to move around and with those devices, which actually is a resource of huge amount of knowledge. So that's, from a design point of view, from an architecture point of view, that's really freed up the idea of spaces and an opportunity to break down those physical barriers.
Yeah, cool. So in the industrial era, it was like preparing people at schools to be warehouse workers. So what are we trying to prepare people in education now to be in the workforce, or what's the best way of doing it, you think?
Yeah, again, you'll hear a lot of things bandied around about this, like we need to be self-motivated. Knowledge workers, for example, you might hear that sort of comment. But really, the way I see it is that what we have now through technology is access to knowledge. We're learning how to learning how to access and navigate that knowledge, and most importantly, then how to work with knowledge and information with each other in a collaborative way, and that's where innovation really comes from.
Yep. Yeah, awesome. And that big thing of collaboration. So we're sitting here in the Gray Puksand offices, and you got hot desks. And can you just tell us a little bit about what your design philosophy was for your own offices, where you're, I guess, walking the talk?
Yeah. Well, again, it sort of follows on, I guess, from the way we work. It's a bit easier in an architect's office, I think, because in many ways, the way we work has always been a team collaborative approach, working not only within our own teams of designers, interior designers, architects, graphic designers, but also with engineers and bringing them in. So we need spaces that allow for that sort of collaboration. But what we are exploring now in our new office is not not having necessarily ownership over all of the real estate, or each person having ownership of a desk. So we are exploring an activity-based arrangement. I don't have a desk at all. I have a locker, that sort of scenario. But what it has done is it's allowed us to create a whole variety of other purposefully sort of designed meeting spaces, large meeting spaces for up to maybe 75 people or more, or little collaborative meeting spaces like the one we're sitting in now, which is really just designed for 4 people, and a spectrum of different space around that. We also get an opportunity to play with some interesting furniture. There's some interesting little acoustic chairs which have sound systems in them, and all sorts of fun devices. So it's good to be able to experiment with the design, and we can bring that to we bring that into our interiors with our corporate interiors, but also very much into our educational design.
Cool. So with the education, and so in the past, I guess people would just sit there and listen to the teacher. Are you trying to bring this collaboration and project-based learning? Is that some of the philosophy in schools, or?
So, first of all, I'm not an educational specialist. I'm an architect, a designer, but we have worked with some leading thinkers in this area. For example, working with Dr. Julia Atkin at the moment on some great projects, and have done for some time. But project-based learning and the idea of the classroom and those sorts of things, the philosophy really is that there's many different spaces and places that you can learn. In fact, the classroom is not the only space. It's really the point. Yeah. But so it's really about encouraging a variety of purposefully activated spaces. And so what we're really doing is designing around what the activity is or the activities that can take place in a certain designed area. Cool. So in some ways, I would even say that some of these spaces aren't entirely flexible because they're actually designed for a specific purpose. But key to that is to design in an adaptability to those spaces, so they can have different arrangements depending on the activity, the teaching and learning activity that's actually taking place in that environment. I mean, of course, there are some areas where it's quite very specific, like a science lab or a technology area. But there's a whole lot of other things that can happen around those as well. Yeah,
awesome. Another thing you're working on are vertical schools. So can you just tell us a little bit about why schools are going vertical and the need to go, higher density with schools?
Well, we're working with a couple of government schools at the moment here in Victoria specifically, and what's really driven that, I think, is the requirement to actually have a school in an area where there is no school anymore, but it is now fully developed and there is no land area. So the reality is we're trying to develop a high school on a site that is, just a small fraction of what you'd normally have for a high school. So it's forced it to go vertical to create the environment. I think it's also from a sustainability point of view, and this is sort of more of a personal comment, that I think bringing schools in a more dense space into a city where there are people, where there are families, means that a lot of people have access to that school without having to travel, and so it reduces the pressure on public transport and the rest, and it also stops the sort of urban sprawl, if you like. I think that's a positive from my point of view.
And is there any with that, is there any other benefits of having schools stacked on top of each other in regards to the collaboration and all that? Because I remember school being outside the whole time, and are kids going to miss that part of it, the sunshine part as well?
No, look, I think that it is a challenge, but that's an architectural and design challenge. Look, I think actually we've discovered in the process of designing a 5-storey high school the possibility of actually creating a wonderful sense of collaboration and movement and cross-curricular sort of curriculum sort of crossover, networking of different subjects and that sort of thing through the space. And look, there are examples, of course. This is not new in other parts of the world, but what we have done is tried to design the school based around what we've been talking about, these new pedagogies. And one of the things in the Prahan High School, which is the one I'm referring to, is we've tried to bring science, technology, engineering, maths and art, all of these sort of subjects into the core of the building through a void that goes right up through every level of the building with a huge glass skylight roof.
Yeah, cool.
So it's a very exciting. You move into straight into the front door of the building into this atrium space. Your eye is drawn up, and there are these collab spaces that pop out into the space, which reveal the learning, reveal the excitement of the design of the education spaces.
Yeah,
so it's like a gallery
Yep.
of opportunity for education as you move into the building.
Yeah.
And further to that, we provide a rotating sort of group of stairs and bleachers, presentation spaces that rotate you up through the building, a little bit like the movement through the Guggenheim or something like that, which is, again, encouraging movement and crossover and collaboration and excitement to move through the building.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds like a really cool school. So what other is there any other examples of projects you were working on now using this design pedagogy?
Yeah, look, all of our projects really start from the principles of what are the activities that are taking place now in the education spaces. And we work with leading educators, as I said, whether they're the principal of the school who is leading that thinking, or whether we bring in independent experts to assist in that. But it's really specific to the school, specific to that community, and the way they're adapting their spaces or creating new spaces.
Yeah.
We do a lot of primary schools as well, and doing a couple of multi-level primary schools as well. Not as quite as dense as these, but it is an interesting challenge because I think it's great for the kids just to be able to step inside and outside into their sort of backyard, if you like, of their spaces. So we try and create those at a multi-level sort of arrangement as well.
Yeah, cool. So is education a growing sector at the moment in Melbourne, considering now maybe the apartments might be dying down a bit? Is education something that's...
Look, education's always going to be a major requirement moving forward. I mean, as the population grows, as older facilities, aren't delivering the sort of educational sort of environments that are required for the future. So, and look, I think there is a huge requirement for schools to be developed over the next many years. Yeah,
awesome. And as our cities develop and get our population grows, do you think going vertical is probably the way to go for all resi and offices and everything, or going out a bit further?
Yeah, look, I don't think it's a one size sort of future. It depends on the specific context. Where schools are required in an urban zone, I think we are now developing a really mature approach to how to design schools on a constricted site. That means going vertical. It means adapting the brief to provide built external area, which is never really considered, but rooftop terraces and playing. We've got an entire basketball court on the roof that opens out onto a roof terrace. So these sorts of things start to emerge as a new part of a brief for projects that maybe the providers haven't thought of before.
Cool.
But there might be other parts of the city where, a two-storey building or even a single-storey building is still absolutely fine, depending on the nature of the location.
So putting a basketball court on the roof terrace, is there any other? How do you do that? Is there any? I could imagine if someone throws the basketball over the...
It's actually an indoor. It's actually
gotcha.
An indoor
basketball
court, but it basically flows out onto the roof terrace.
Cool.
So we've got these massive doors that actually open up, and then we can combine the internal space with the external space and create a running track that goes the full length of the building, for example. So this is what I mean by adaptability and designing for a specific sort of purpose, but you can then innovate and find ways to make it even more.
So running track inside it's hard to get your brain around when you've never really, never seen something like that. But is there any other things so you got basketball courts up there, so you can put tennis courts inside the building? And
look, we don't have a tennis court, but there's a multi-level roof. It's a double-storey roof. So one area is for more active sort of team sports and play and movement and that sort of thing. And on an upper level terrace, we have that's where the canteen is, and we've got pergolas and beautiful sort of seating and spaces like that for having lunch, so it's providing specific sort of external recreation and passive play spaces as well.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit of advantage with the vertical school because it's got a fantastic view of the city from the roof. So
yeah, definitely. And with you've mentioned adaptability a few times. Do you think it's important to be able to completely adapt to a new building type? Say, education might go into office building or vice versa.
I think you're sort of touching on the idea of future-proofing buildings, and yeah, it's an interesting comment. I think what challenges us a lot there is the engineering of the building. I won't talk much about this, but whether it's a naturally ventilated building or whether it's actively treated, or whether the structural grid, how that sort of works, and whether you're designing in things that can't be used for other purposes. So I think that is important to think about that, and particularly as technology continues to develop. We just don't know, what's around the corner in many ways in terms of that. So, artificial intelligence and virtual reality, all of these sorts of things, starts to make the question, well, what does the school of the future even look like?
Yeah.
What makes people want to come to this education space? If they can do everything in a virtual world, if you like. So there's a lot of interesting issues there around future-proofing buildings. But, again, I think I'll probably just pull back that you design based around the activity of that event that's happening in that space.
Definitely.
And if that space can be designed in a clever way and can be adapted to a number of events around that idea, then yes, I think it's definitely a future-proofed solution.
Yeah, just on that VR and AI, I spoke to Shane Scranton, who was the founder of Iris VR, and he was saying in the future what they're working on is you put on the virtual reality goggles and then you work, this is what he thinks is coming, you work with the artificial intelligence in virtual reality to do your design. Yes. He's got an architectural background, but it's...
Look, it is good. Look, it's exciting, but I think that it's the creative side.
Yeah.
And it's the ability to think laterally and create this creative skills, the skills to work with other minds, to collaborate.
Yeah.
These are the things that, maybe one day AI will take over, but but I think at this stage it's those sorts of skills that will survive. We've used the VR goggles and things like that in the design of this school to actually of course it's available now, everything's done in 3D and you put the glasses on, you can look around the whole space.
Yeah.
Not so much as a design process, but definitely as a communication tool. When we're talking with our clients, we actually had this in place to workshop some of our ideas with some of the students that were eventually going to be coming to this school.
Yeah.
And that really, I think, was a wonderful sort of journey for us as well, just to see how they responded and how the sort of comments they were making and that sort of thing, by being able to go into that virtual sort of design space.
Yeah, I can imagine if you're, competing against other architects for work and you're the one who takes the client through the actual building with the VR, then, it's probably a no-brainer that you'll win the job.
Not necessarily. not necessarily.
Not that easy, maybe.
No, it's not that easy. But I think any sort of communication tool that we can come up with that it gives our clients an opportunity to understand and have a voice into commenting about what we're designing and making sure that we're all on the same page and getting the best out of the project. So
awesome, cool. As we come toward the end now, so what do you think will have the biggest impact on the buildings industry in the future? And we've kind of been touching on a lot about the future, but is there anything in particular you think might be huge?
Well, I won't comment on around the sort of engineering and sort of physical side, but I think we have touched on. I think it's technology to a large degree, and what makes people want to come to an office and work together. What makes people want to, to come together to a school to learn together? So, do we need huge facilities that allow for this, and what are going to be in those facilities that actually attract that? You'll hear the term sticky campus or something like that, providing great amenity, and that's what will bring people together. But who knows? Who knows with the future, what else might adapt out of that? Do we send our avatars?
Yeah, who knows? Like, I think, 10 years ago, Google Maps was almost unbelievable, and now it's just taken for granted.
Yes, yeah.
And every day. So in 10 years' time, who knows? But awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Stephen. That was awesome. And if people want to find out more about you, or where can they find you guys and the awesome work you guys are doing?
Oh, well, Gray Puksand, just look us up on the internet or www.graypuksand.com.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks very much.
Hey guys, Adam here. Just before you go, just one quick request. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a review. It helps our rating and ranking on iTunes, so more people can hear from the people who are making our cities better places for our future.